Hey everybody! In today's video, we will be testing this brand new power station from Jackery. This is their HomePower 3600 Plus. Now Jackery claims this is the world's lightest, smallest 3600 watt-hour LFP power station, only coming in at 77 pounds or 35 kilograms. Now when looking at the competition, the brand new Anker F3000, which has a smaller battery, comes in at 91 pounds. The original EcoFlow Delta Pro, which has the same size battery as this, comes in at 99 pounds. And even the Pecron E3600, which has a smaller battery than this, comes in at 79 pounds. So this is a lighter power station. Now let's jump into the actual specifications for the HomePower 3600 Plus, starting with the battery. It's a lithium iron phosphate battery rated at 3,584 watt hours. Now what's interesting is they used a lower voltage battery. It has a nominal voltage of 44.8 volts, which means it's a 14S battery instead of a 16S battery, which you usually see in other power stations. Now this is rated at 6,000 cycles till 70% of the original capacity. Now the inverter on the power station is rated for 3,600 watts continuous output. You can connect your loads up to these outlets here, or this 30 amp RV port up here. Now 3,600 watts is 120 volts at 30 amps. So yes, you can connect your RV up to this port and get the full 30 amp output. Now this power station is meant for home backup, so you may have noticed they have left off the 12 volt cigarette port, so there's no 12 volt output on this. They do include 4 USB ports. You have 2 USB-C power delivery ports rated at 100 watts each, and then you have 2 quick charge USB-A ports rated at 18 watts each. Now moving to the side of the power station, starting with this port up here, this is the AC expansion port. This allows you to connect 2 of these units together to give you 240 volt split phase output, good for 7,200 watts continuous. Right here you have your DC expansion port. This allows you to connect up multiple Jackery expansion batteries, and you can connect up to 21 kilowatt hours, so quite the capacity. Right here you have a 1000 watt solar charge controller. Each port is good for 500 watts. I'll be testing that later in the video under the charging section of the video. And along with this AC input, this is good for 1700 watts input. And this also supports UPS functionality with a 10 millisecond cutover time. Now I have actually been testing this power station for a few weeks now, and one thing that's made it really convenient to move around my house are the built-in wheels and the collapsible handle. So you put it where you want, and then the actual handle tucks into the back to save on space. Okay, so I've covered all the basic specifications and features for the new HomePower 3600 Plus, but what about pricing? Well, Jackery is actually launching this power station today for a price of $17.99, or about 50 cents per watt hour. So in the remaining portion of the video, I will be doing extensive testing on the power station to see how it really performs. My goal is to make you guys an educated buyer so you can decide if this one is right for your use case or not. Now at the bottom of the video, there will be chapters that you can kind of jump around to, but just be aware at the end of the video, I will sum up the results and put this through my power station grading system. I'm excited. Let's go ahead and start the testing. First, I wanted to see if the power station could run the maximum advertised load for 15 minutes, which is 3,600 watts. During the test, my oscilloscope was showing an excellent sine wave output, and I measured 121 volts at 60 hertz. Now, this is the same high quality power you'd see from your utility company. After 10 minutes of running the maximum load, the cooling fans weren't too loud. I only measured 51 decibels with my sound meter from 3 feet away. I then used my thermal camera to confirm the power station temperatures during the test. I saw a peak of 115 degrees Fahrenheit near the exhaust fan ports, indicating no signs of overheating. The 3600 Plus was able to run the full rated load for 15 minutes without shutting down. Now what about the maximum wattage the inverter allows you to pull before it overloads? I turned up the load from the previous test till it got a little over 5,300 watts and the inverter shut off. So you have quite a bit of power available above 3,600 watts before the inverter shuts down. So next, I'll be testing the UPS functionality on the 3600 Plus. It's advertised to have a 10 millisecond cutover time, so I have my desktop workstation and monitor and studio lights all connected into the AC inverter, and then it is charging from the wall in UPS mode. As I disconnect the power cable, it'll swap over to battery backup, and I'll measure the actual cutover time with my oscilloscope. So I'll be cutting the power cord in 3, 2, 1. So here's a screenshot of the actual cutover time. Between these two cursors, it completely lost power. And doing the math, that is 9 milliseconds exactly. So you can see the computer is still running after that first test, but let's go do a couple more just to make sure. So second UPS test in 3, 2, 1. Third and final UPS test in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so after 3 tests, you can see the computer is still running. It's definitely fast enough to run your sensitive electronics. So in the next test, I want to use this outlet tester to see if the AC inverter has a floating ground or a bonded ground. So when you have the AC inverter enabled and the power station is not charging from the wall, it does have an open or floating ground. Now I've just connected the AC charging cable, so whenever this is in UPS mode or charging from the wall, it does pick up ground from the charging source. So moving on to the next test for the AC inverter, I want to see if it can handle surge or inductive loads. The inverter is rated for 3600 watts continuous output, but can it surge higher than that? Well, I've connected up to the 30 amp output, so let's see how it does. Now for this test, I have my Klein clamp meter set to inrush mode on the hot wire. As we turn on each of these loads, it's going to sense the peak amperage, so you'll see that on the screen right here. This compressor is rated for 10 amps, but it should pull higher than that. Let's see if it works. Okay, so no issues at all powering up the air compressor. We saw a total of 24.85 amps. Next, we'll be powering up a slightly larger appliance. It's a 12 amp vacuum. Here we go. Okay, so 43.01 amps, quite a bit, and it powered it up just fine. Now stepping it up to the largest appliance is a 15 amp table saw. Let's see how it does. Now it powered up the table saw without any issues, but it's interesting that the table saw pulled a little bit less amperage. We only saw 39.32 amps. Now for the final test, what happens if we try the table saw and the vacuum at the same time? Well, it powered up both of them without an issue and pulled a total of 51.16 amps. That is a lot of surge current. Now, how much usable capacity should you expect when running loads off the inverter? I discharged the power station with a resistive load until the battery died and measured 3,210 watt hours of usable capacity. This result is 89.5% of the advertised capacity, which is a bit higher than my goal of 85%. Next, how much power is used as the AC inverter is turned on for a long period of time? Starting with the power station fully charged and leaving the inverter turned on for 12 hours, the state of charge had dropped down to only 90%, meaning the inverter had used 10% of the battery over 12 hours, or about 0.83% per hour. That's quite efficient. Now, does the inverter produce any interference? I measured over 2,000 millivolts of EMI using my dirty electricity meter, indicating that the inverter generates an above average level of electromagnetic interference. But is that level actually audible? Connecting my guitar amp to the inverter, I didn't notice any audible noise. Now in the final test, I wanted to demonstrate how long the HomePower 3600 Plus could run a portion of my house during an extended power outage. The power station was connected up to my transfer switch, and up on the screen you'll see a breakdown of what's powered by that transfer switch. The power station ran for a total of 7 hours before the inverter shut off. Now the average load was around 500 watts, but I did see higher bursts of power when multiple devices were running at the same time. Now, this is kind of a smaller home backup, so I'd say that's a decent runtime, but remember, you could easily extend the runtime by adding expansion batteries or by charging with solar panels during the outage. Wow, that is a ton of AC inverter tests, but let's recap the results quickly. So the inverter is rated at 3600 watts continuous, and it did perform well under that max load test. The sine wave was clean, and it handled 3600 watts without an issue. Now, when it came to the fans during that test, they weren't very loud or harsh in any way. So the fans are actually really good on the power station. Now, when it came to the surge capability of the inverter, it handled the loads that I threw out at. We got up to 6100 watts. And apparently the inverter is rated up to 7200 watts. I just couldn't get the wattage up that high. Now, when it came to the idle power consumption of the inverter, it was less than 1%, which is really good. And the usable capacity was actually really good as well at 89.5%. So the inverter is really efficient. Now, typically in this next portion of the video, I would test the 12 volt output and the USB ports, but because Jackery has left off the 12 volt output on the HomePower 3600 Plus, we can just test the USB ports. Now Jackery gives you 4 USB ports to charge your mobile devices. You turn them on by pressing this button here. You have 2 100 watt power delivery ports and 2 USB-A quick charge ports. So while testing the first 100 watt USB-C power delivery port, we are getting power delivery 3.0 at 100 watts. We have 101 watts going out of the power station and 96 watts going in to charge this power bank. Now moving on to the next port, we are seeing the same results, power delivery 3.0 at 100 watts. Now testing the first USB-A port, we are seeing quick charge 2.0 protocol at 12 volts. We're seeing about 15 watts out of the power station and 15 to 16 watts into the power bank. And moving on to the final USB port, we are seeing the same results, quick charge 2.0 at 12 volts. Now I think it's important to make sure that you can use all 4 USB ports at the same time. I'm charging 2 different power banks and 2 phones. We're seeing 214 to 213 watts output. So yes, it does allow you to use all the USB ports at the same time. Now I am disappointed that they removed the 12 volt output on this power station. Now I understand it's meant for home backup. That's why they call it the HomePower 3600 Plus, but they also market this to be used in an RV. Now it would work great for an RV to power the AC side of things, but because there's no DC output, that means you'd have to have a complete separate 12 volt system. So a 12 volt house battery and some way to charge that up. And then you're managing 2 different systems. Imagine if they had a high DC output on this, good for 30 amps, you could integrate that into your fuse panel, remove your house battery, and you have one system that runs the entire setup. So in the next portion of the video, let's go ahead and move forward with all the charging tests on the 3600 Plus. Now Jackery includes an AC charging cable in the box, along with the user manual and this handy chart to show you which charging port your power station has. Now if we take a closer look at this sheet, they list the power stations that charge with USB-C, the power stations that charge with the older 7909 barrel plug, and then the newer ones that charge with the 8020 plug. Now there is a slight difference between these two based on the outer diameter and the inner diameter of the barrel plug. For example, 7909 means the outer diameter is 7.9 millimeters and the inner is 0.9. And then the outer diameter for this one is 8 millimeters and the inner is 2 millimeters. And you can see that listed on these images. And right here I have an example of both the 7909 on the left and the 8020 on the right. Basically the 8020 is meant to handle a little bit more amperage. Now on the side of the power station, you have your charging ports. Down here is your AC charging port. This is where you connect the AC charging cable to charge from a wall outlet or a gas generator, and it supports up to 15 amps input. Now above that, you have your DC charging ports. These are 8020 ports, which is nice. They list that here. Now this power station has a single 1000 watt MPPT solar charge controller. Now these are basically tied together, so when you are using these, you want to make sure that your solar panels match the same voltage on each side. Now the specs for these ports are 12 to 60 volts or 12 amps each, and a combined 24 amps for up to 1000 watts. Now let's go and do some DC charging tests on the power station. I have my 1200 watt adjustable power supply connected up to one of the charging ports, and I want to start with charging at a 12 volt battery. So I have the voltage set to 13.5 volts. This power supply is set to 26 amps, but you can see the power station is limiting the input. We are getting 7.37 amps right now, or right around 103 watts. Now this is designed so that it doesn't blow a fuse in your vehicle. So you can plan for around 35 hours to charge if this is completely empty and you're charging from a 12 volt battery. In order to speed up the charging, you will have to get your voltage above 16 volts because that's what it says in the owner's manual. Once you get above 16 volts, you'll get more amperage from these ports. Now I've just adjusted the voltage up to 18.5 volts, so now we are seeing more amperage. We're getting almost 22 amps, but you'll notice that I am using one cable here, and this is going to overheat and melt that cable eventually. So when you are dealing with higher amperage, you're going to want to use both charging ports at the same time. So I've gone ahead and connected up both of these adapters so they are now sharing the load and they will not overheat. So with this 21.9 amps or 22 amps, we have 11 amps going through each one of these, and that is perfect. So basically, if you wanted to connect up a bunch of 12 volt solar panels and they were producing about 18.5 volts, you'd see around 400 watts peak into the power station. Now, in order to charge the power station faster, we have to keep raising the voltage. So what would happen if we charged from a 24 volt source? I have my adjustable power supply set to 26.5 volts to simulate a 24 volt battery, and we are still getting around 22 amps input, but you can see we have an increase on the screen up to 593 watts. So as we raise the voltage, the power station charges faster. And you can see a major difference here. Charging at 12 volts, it was going to take around 35 hours to charge the power station. Charging at 24 volts, we've dropped that charging time down to 6 hours. Now, what about connecting 400 watt residential solar panels into these charging ports? Most are going to put out an ideal voltage around 34 to 35 volts. So I have my adjustable power supply set to 34.5 volts. We are seeing 22 amps still. So if you wanted to connect in two 400 watt residential panels, you'd see almost 800 watts into the power station. We're seeing 779 watts. Now, if you had a slightly higher voltage than this, you'd actually see more power, because as you raise up the voltage, it's going to stay around 22 amps, but you get a little bit more power. So if you had solar panels that put out around 40 volts or even a little bit above 40 volts, you could probably max out the charging input. For example, I've adjusted the voltage output to 44 volts. So if you could find solar panels that have the peak power around 44 volts, you could get the full 1000 watts input from solar panels. You just have to connect those in parallel to get at least 22 amps. So we are basically maxing out the charge controller, 44 volts at 22 amps. And now for my final test using my adjustable power supply, can you connect up a 48 volt battery to the solar charging ports to max out the solar input? The answer is yes. I have it set to 54 volts. We are seeing 17.6 amps input and 1000 watts. So connecting a 48 volt battery up to the charging ports will max out the charging input as well. Now let's go ahead and do some AC charging tests on the power station. In the Smart app, you actually have three different settings. You have fast charging mode, you have quiet charging mode, and you have customize. That customize option is a new option for Jackery. Now I have it set to fast charge mode, and we are seeing almost 1700 watts into the power station, which is typical. They say that this is the fastest charging speed for AC input. Now I've selected quiet charging mode in the app, and you can see the charging speed has dropped down to 828 watts input. Now this charging speed will vary depending on the temperature of the power station and ambient temperature, but it's going to aim to be around 30 decibels, which is basically silent. Now what about the customized setting? This is a new setting for Jackery, and I love that they've added this. Now in the app, I've set it to 100 watts charging speed, and you can see we are charging at around 125 watts. Let's go up to 500 watts. We'll let it load for a second. And there we go. The power station jumped up to 500 watts. I love having this full adjustability, because if you have a gas generator or let's say an inverter in your car that is limited to a certain wattage, you can select the exact wattage, or you can kind of just select to what you want. For example, 1000 watts, you can see it jumps up to 1000 watts on the screen. And then if you want to max it out at 1700 watts, you can also do that. So I love having the customized feature with AC charging, just so you can set it to exactly what you want. Now, what about dual charging on the power station? Can you have DC input and AC input at the same time? Well, I have the power station set to fast charging mode with AC input, so about 1700 watts. I have this adjustable power supply maxed out at 1000 watts, so we're almost seeing 2700 watts into the power station. That appears to be the fastest charging speed. So yes, it does support dual charging, and you can get quite a bit faster charging with both inputs connected. Now what about pass-through charging, or the ability to charge the power station while powering loads? I have the AC inverter enabled, running this 1000 watt heater. I'm also charging this power bank over USB-C. The inverter and USB-C are enabled while fast charging the power station, so it does support pass-through charging. Now I do have the power station set to fast charging mode, so we're seeing about 1700 watts input. You can see 920 watts are going out to these loads, and an excess of 665 watts is charging the battery. But what happens if we go over 1700 watts? Well, usually when these heaters turn on max mode, they're gonna surge. So watch this right here. We go up to 1900 watts. And what happens? Well, it says, hey, I don't have enough power to charge and power to the load at the same time. So it shuts off the AC inverter with an error and then continues charging the battery. So just FYI, if you go over 1700 watts while pass-through charging, it will shut off the AC inverter and continue charging the battery. I also wanted to test the AC charging efficiency, or how much energy it takes to fully charge the battery. Starting from empty, I tracked the usage with an inline watt meter, I measured 3,960 watt hours to charge the 3,584 watt hour battery, which means the charger is about 90% efficient. Now let's go ahead and move forward with solar testing on the HomePower 3600 Plus. Jackery sent out their new 500 watt panel. This is the Solar Saga 500X. Now this has a bunch of different mounting options. It uses these brackets where you can do like a W mount. They advise that you can mount this to a roof or even to a fence. There's a lot of different ways to use these panels, but for my purposes, I am just gonna lean them up on these chairs. Now, if we look close at these are actually bifacial TopCon solar cells. So I'm expecting pretty decent power from these. As for solar conditions, we are around 90 degrees today. There are just a few little clouds, so I'll make sure that it's pretty clear when we're testing on the power station. Now, I've just connected the solar panels into the power station, and we are seeing up to 471 watts input. Now, that's fairly impressive because it's hot today. These solar panels have been heat soaking for about 20 minutes, and we're still producing almost the full rated output, which is 500 watts. Now, just as a side note, I did not take the time to angle these perfectly because I just leaned them up on these chairs. And also, it's a little bit past midday. It's around 2:30. I usually test these at midday, but I just didn't have quite the time today, so it's just a little bit later. So you might be able to expect a little bit more power from these, especially if it wasn't quite so hot. Now, just as a reminder, the 3600 Plus has a 1000 watt charge controller with 2 ports. We are only connected to one of those ports with a 500 watt solar panel. So you could purchase 2 of these 500X solar panels and connect them both in to get close to 1000 watts charging. But I don't have 2 of these panels. Let's see how much wattage we can get using a different set of solar panels connected to each of the charging ports. Now, I've just set up 2 of these ZoopW 450 watt portable panels. Now, these aren't rated for quite as much power as the Jackery 500 watt panel, but I've connected each one into a charging port, so let's see how much power we're getting. So with both those panels plugged into the power station, we are seeing a total of almost 850 watts. So basically 425 watts per solar panel. So just a little bit under the actual rated output, but for the warm conditions today, that is pretty good output. Now, I will say a 1000 watt charge controller is a little underpowered for such a large device. I would have loved to see a high voltage input like the Jackery 5000 that can take larger arrays like this 1200 watt array or even this 1600 watt array. That would allow you to charge the power station much faster. So I would have loved to see maybe a 1600 watt charge controller or even a 2000 watt charge controller for a power station this size. I also tested having solar panels connected overnight on the 3600 Plus. In the morning, once the sun started coming up, the power station started charging. I didn't notice any issues or alarms during this test, so it's okay to have solar panels connected all the time. I also tested to have the power station completely turned off and then connecting solar input. The power station turned on and started charging, so solar panels do wake up the power station if it's died or if it's been turned off. Okay, so we finished all the tests on the HomePower 3600 Plus. Let's briefly talk about warranty and customer support. Starting with the warranty, they offer a 3-year standard warranty on this product with a 2-year extension if you register it, so you can get a 5-year warranty total. Now, as for Jackery customer support, out of all the power station companies that I test on the channel, I get the least amount of complaints about issues with Jackery support. Now, I love that right here on the front of their user manual or owner's manual, they have their phone number pasted, so it's easy to find and it's easy to call them. I did call them and I got a live representative. And out of all the comments that are left on my channel, most people, very high percentage, say that they have good experiences with customer support from Jackery and they take care of their issues. Now, Jackery's been around from the beginning. They've been around for 11 years making power stations. They know what they're doing. And so there is a slightly higher price to their product, but you are getting what you pay for. Now, up on the screen, you're going to see the results for my power station grading system in the HomePower 3600 Plus. It got 8.5 points out of 10 points, or a B grade. Now, it missed out on 3 different items. If you remember, this does not have a DC output, so it missed out on 2 of these, 85% of the rated DC output and supporting 150 watts of DC output. The third thing was the solar charging taking longer than 3 hours. So after all the testing in the video, you can see the HomePower 3600 Plus has really decent performance with just a few caveats. If you're looking for 12 volt output, you're gonna have to choose a different power station. And also, if you are going to prioritize solar charging only, you might want to look for a different power station as well. And let me explain why. Well, if you're running a 500 watt load on the inverter and you're charging with 1000 watts input, it's going to take 8 hours to charge the power station. Most people do not have 8 hours of high solar output per day, and so it's going to be impossible to charge this in one day while running a load with solar input. In my opinion, it just needed a larger charge controller. The 1000 watt charge controller just isn't big enough. Now, can you charge it in one day and run loads? Yes, with dual charging or with AC charging, you can do that, just not with solar charging. So just be aware, if solar charging is your priority, it may be pretty difficult to charge it in one day and run your loads. Now, as always, I'd love to hear you guys' feedback about the 3600 Plus, so make sure you leave a comment down in the comment section letting me know what you think about the power station, whether you love it, whether you hate it, what do you like about it, what do you not like about it. Give feedback to me and both Jackery so they can always improve their product. Now, I will have a link down in the video description and also in a pinned comment if you are interested in learning more about the power station. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you smash the thumbs up button before you leave, and I will recommend a couple of videos that you can check out. Maybe you'll be interested in those as well. We'll see you guys in the next one.